This is Brad Costella, Senior Director of Strategy at Adlucent, with this past month's top takeaways in the digital advertising space. So the three big takeaways that I think are really important for advertisers to understand coming out of the month of August are the pushing back of the sunsetting of third-party cookies from Google, some of the interesting Q2 results from both the ad platforms and some of the big names in retail. Then lastly, some news from TikTok that they're kind of launching and reconfiguring shopping ads on their platform. So to dive a little bit into more detail on each of those three topics, the cookie sunset is obviously a big deal because this is the second time that Google pushed back the deprecation timeline for when they expect to phase out cookies in Chrome. And now we're looking at late 2024 for when that will actually take place. But what's really interesting at this point is the fact that advertisers and other platforms are already starting to test cookie safe targeting methods, which means that at this point it might not be up to Google specifically when that happens. So it's not news that advertisers should take lightly and ignore options for targeting outside of cookie-based for marketing. One thing to note is the fact that Fledge is now available for some advertisers to start utilizing as a testing methodology from Google that doesn't use cookies, and will actually bucket users into different interest categories. So that's Google's main attempt at this point at trying to find a cookieless way to target folks based on interests, but it's still very nascent. So we'll see kind of how that works out and whether or not that works better than some of the other options that are coming out from other platforms out there. Also, particularly interesting in terms of timing is the fact that this also is coming right at the same time when the Department of Justice is potentially going to be rolling out antitrust litigation against Google, which actually could have a much bigger impact on some of their ad tech and ad serving. It's critical to keep an eye out on where that potentially goes and how that might change all of this again in the coming months. So next, looking at some of those Q2 results that I called out, I think it's particularly noteworthy that this was really not a good quarter as Q2 results and earnings were released from the major ad platforms. It was not a great quarter year over year, where all of them faced really tough comps. Looking back at 2021, where there was incredible growth, so Google, Meta, Snapchat, TikTok, they all came out and had earnings and revenue growth that was pretty stagnant. Most had single-digit growth over 2021, were really not kind of the banner quarters that they've been seeing today. And obviously, that comes on the heels, like I said, of stellar results last year, but also as inflation has increased, we've seen a lot of pullback in consumer spending. That kind of was a perfect storm for the platforms, where they also saw that spending and revenue really decline. So as we head into the end of the year, really something to keep an eye out on how that continues to take shape and the impact that both ad spending and consumer behavior have on the platforms in particular. Kind of flipping that around a little bit and looking at some of the retail results that we saw come out, there was a little bit more positive news, especially in the digital space for certain retailers, where retailers like Lowe's and Home Depot both did actually see positive year-over-year growth, particularly in digital ad spending, which was great for them in that on top of the inflationary numbers and some of the consumer behavior shifting, they also had really strong 2021 numbers where folks were heavily involved in DIY and home projects, and so to see growth on top of that, positive news heading into the back half of the year. And then brands like Target and Walmart also did both see digital sales increase, but they were interestingly saw some declines on the earnings side of things, where Target in particular saw a 90% decrease year over year in earnings because of the fact that they had to really move to heavily discount some inventory as they saw stockpiles build up after 2021 and some of the supply chain issues they had, but then they saw consumer demand fall at the same time. And so we're really looking at some overstocking inventory that they discounted heavily to kind of counteract against and be in a better position heading the back half of the year. And then lastly, one of the more interesting pieces of platform news from one of the up-and-comers is TikTok launching a new format of shopping ads. So this new format is kind of an iteration of where they've continued to move, trying to get their ad platform to be a little bit more lower funnel, not just focused on branding and engagement, but really trying to be a place where consumers can shop and can find products and convert, and advertisers who are more performance focused can find success. And so these new campaign types are similar to what we've seen on other platforms, where they're starting to combine multiple ad formats and multiple options within one machine learning driven campaign type, with really the goal goal of making it easier and lowering the barrier of entry for advertisers to be able to get on the platform and then broaden their reach at the same time. So these formats should theoretically allow for more types of shopping engagement with lower investment in terms of time spent and energy from advertisers. And so it'll be an important thing to keep an eye on of how, engagement from consumers actually works on the and whether or not brands can see strong ROI. And the real big call out here is the fact that, TikTok is really trying to change their ad platform and really get it to a place where the ad dollars spent on the platform better matched to the time spent. There's currently still a huge mismatch in terms of consumers spending a lot of time on the platform and the engagement there being really, really high compared to other platforms. But ad spend is just so much lower as the ad tech is just not quite where it is on other platforms. Positive news from TikTok to see continued development there, and we'll see where that nets out for them. So what's important to keep in mind moving forward, both going into the month of September and really, as we head into the back half of the year and the holiday season. And I think the biggest thing to call out there is where inflation continues to go. And, unfortunately, I don't have a crystal ball on that. It's pretty safe to say at this point that we do continue to expect consumer demand and sentiment to be pretty dampened. Inflation, hopefully gets to be a little bit more positive, but it's not going to be dropping down to, the low single digit numbers anytime soon from what we've seen. And so as those numbers continue to come out and as that continues to have an impact on both consumer behavior and ad spend behavior, I think that's really the biggest call out that I would make moving forward into the year of really understanding what that means for your business and your vertical in particular. There's a number of different things that might happen based off of some of those impacts where you might see consumers spending more on the same goods that they were buying before. They might be downgrading to a cheaper alternative. They might be buying less, like really depending on your product set and kind of what vertical you're in. Any of those things are possible. And on the flip side of that, you could see more competition from brands as they try and steal more market share in a decreasing market size. You might see CPCs start to go up as folks are spending more. You might see advertisers pulling back, and you might see a little bit of white space in your market. Just being able to be nimble and really think critically about what's happening in your space and taking quick action on that, I think is going to be key going into the back half of this year. Thanks for listening in. Stay tuned for next month's insights.